Welcome back to Part 2 of DBX ZonePRO Basic Programming. We will pick up where we left off in the Part 1 video with the Zone Controller ZC panel configuration. I'm ready to move on to the controllers. Click on the Next button at the bottom right of the screen. This will take you to the ZC or Zone Controller panel configuration page. All ZonePRO devices may use up to 12 controllers at the same time. The zone controller types may be found in the Type drop-down menu. Note that only one volume and one source controller may be used for an output zone. This page allows you to select the first 6 controllers needed for the install. In this example, we will only need 2 controllers, which will be used to control the sales floor source and volume. Click on the drop-down menu labeled Type just below the heading ZC Input 1, as seen here. The first controller I'm going to need is a ZC3, which will be used as the sales floor source selector. Simply click on the ZC3 menu option. A picture of the ZC3 will appear along with a picture of the straight-through Cat5 connection point for the controller on the back of the ZonePRO device and the dip switch settings needed on that ZC3. Note, this is a good time to set your zone controller dip switches. Next, we will name the controller. In this case, it will be controlling the source for the sales floor, so I will name it Sales Floor now. To the right, you will see the control type. This ZC3 will be a source selector type, which is the default, so there's no need to make a change. To the right, you will see a red button. This button is red to let you know that there are options for this control that have not been set. Clicking on the red button, as I am now, will open the ZC3 Sales Floor window. There's a drop-down menu for positions A, B, C, and D in this window. In this retail application, I want the A position to select the CD player as the source for an output zone. Click on CD. I would like the B position to select the satellite music. I will select satellite now. I want the controller to ignore the C position, so I will select Do Nothing. And in the D position, I will choose None, which will effectively act as a mute for the sales floor zone. Once I click on OK, the ZC3 will take on these attributes. You will notice that the red Edit button has turned blue. This lets me know that the options have been set. Now we move on to ZC input number 2, which will be the sales floor volume control. The volume control we will use in this example is the ZC1, which I will select now. The ZC1 picture appears along with the Cat5 connection point on the back of the ZonePRO and its dip switch settings. You can now name your volume control. Again, I will name it Sales Floor. I will now click on the red Edit button to configure this volume control. The ZC1 volume control gives you the ability to set a minimum and maximum gain for the control. This allows you as the installer to give the customer the level and feel needed for zone volume. I will change my levels to -30 dB for the min and set the max to 0 dB. This will provide a 30 dB total volume adjustment for the customer. Don't worry about being able to turn the level off. They still have the mute ability on the ZC3 source selector in position D. This is easy to begin with and gets even easier as you use the ZonePRO for install after install. With the controllers selected and named, control options set, you can move on by clicking the Next button at the bottom of the page. This next page is where you would set up your next 6 controllers if needed. In this application, we don't need more controllers, but be aware that the only difference for these controllers is where you plug them into on the back of the ZonePRO, as is highlighted in yellow. Go ahead and click on the Next button to move on. You now arrive at the Source ZC Association page of the wizard. We don't have a need in this application to attach controls to our input source gains, but if we did, this is where you would select the control. As an example, if I want a volume control on the input of the CD player, I just click on the drop-down menu next to CD and select the control I would like to operate the CD input gain. Since we don't need input control, Just click on the Next button to move on. This brings us to the Routing and Zone Configuration page of the wizard. There are 4 rows from top to bottom, with the sales floor zone in row 1. There are also 4 columns, with the headings Source, Priority, Page, and Level. The Source drop-down menu next to the sales floor zone is where you will select the ZC3 that will control the source selection for that zone. In this case, I will select ZC Input 1, ZC3, Sales Floor. Now, all source selection on the sales floor is determined by that ZC3 controller. The next column to the right is the Priority Override. This source, if selected and active, will override or turn down the source input. Once the Priority Override source has ended, the ZonePRO will fade back over to the original source. We will leave the Priority Override in each zone as none. To the right of Priority, you will see Page. In the Page drop-down menu, select the page mic that we named at the start of this training. I will select the page mic for all zones now except the on-hold music zone, as I don't want people on hold to hear paging. This will allow the page mic to override or duck the music source while a page is being made and then fade back to music once the page ends. In the next column, we have the level controls. In the drop-down menu, select the ZC1 volume control that matches up with your zone name. Next, I will set my on-hold zone so that the satellite music is always playing. I will not give this zone any options, as I always want the same music at the same level for the on-hold system. Remember that on the second page of the wizard, I selected automatic gain control for the on-hold output zone. AGC will constantly monitor and adjust the zone level to the level you set later. Don't worry about the missing sources for the stockroom and office zones. We'll set those in a minute. Go ahead and click on the Next button. This will bring you to the front panel configuration page of the wizard. Again, there are rows for the sales floor, stockroom, office, and on-hold zones. You have 3 control options that you may provide to a customer from the front panel of all ZonePRO devices that have a front panel. These options from left to right are source selection, mute, and volume control. In the sales floor zone, you will see that these options have been grayed out. This is because the ZC3 is performing the source selection function. Mute is currently enabled and will be visible on the front panel of the ZonePRO. Since we have already defined selection D as mute on the ZC3, I would recommend removing the mute checkmark to prevent someone from muting the sales floor from the front panel accidentally. I'll remove the mute from the stockroom, office, and on-hold as well. The next option to the right is the level control, which again is grayed out because the ZC1 volume control is performing that function. The source option is available for the stockroom, office, and on-hold zones. Here you will uncheck options that should not be available from the front panel. I will uncheck all sources except for CD and satellite in the stockroom and office zones now. I will uncheck all source control for the on-hold zone, as this will only be able to get the satellite music. I will now remove the volume control option for the on-hold zone because we inserted the AGC option earlier. In this application, we will not be using the front panel page 1 and page 2 options, so I will uncheck these boxes now. The page options on the front panel are used to direct paging to only certain areas or zones when the option is needed. See the paging training video for more information on this option. Now that we have come to the end of the wizard, simply press the Finish button and the system is ready to go. That concludes Part 2 of DBX ZonePRO Basic Programming. To continue, please move on to Part 3.